3 in the morning. I'm lying on my brother's couch in Tucson, staring at the ceiling, and I'm doing math in my head. Not business math, not investment math. I'm calculating how many years my body might last against how many years my money might last. And the number on the left keeps shrinking faster than the number on the right. I was 62 years old and I was terrified. Not of dying, of lasting too long. I'm 70 now, and I want to tell you something that nobody told me. Something nobody is going to tell you either. Not your doctor, not your financial advisor, not your kids, not the people who love you most. Because the things that nearly broke me after 60 weren't the things anyone warned me about. And one of them, one specifically, got close enough to put me in an emergency room at 2 in the morning with chest pains, convinced I was having a heart attack. I wasn't having a heart attack. I was having a reckoning. Let me back up. In 2016, I had a printing business I'd built over 21 years. I had a house in Phoenix with a pool and a mortgage I was close to paying off. I had a marriage, not a perfect one. Linda and I had been grinding at each other for years, but it was a marriage. And then over 8 months, the kind of 8 months that you can't describe to someone who hasn't lived through it, I lost all 3. The business went first. Digital killed us slowly and then all at once. Then the house, because the business had been securing the second mortgage. Then Linda, because I think somewhere in her she'd been waiting for an exit, and I'd finally given her one. I'm not bitter about that anymore. I wasn't easy to be around. By January of 2017, I was sleeping on my brother Ray's couch in Tucson, which, if you know Ray, tells you everything. Ray is the kind of man who irons his dish towels. Having a 62-year-old failed businessman sleeping in his living room was not something he signed up for. And he was kind about it in the way that kind people are when they're quietly dying inside. But here is the first thing nobody warned me about. The financial collapse wasn't the worst part. I thought it would be. I thought the worst part would be watching 21 years of work disappear, watching the bank take the house, signing divorce papers across a conference table from a woman I'd once loved enough to terrify me. I thought that was the floor. The floor turned out to be lower. The floor was 3 in the morning on Ray's couch, and the thought that came fully formed into my head, the thought I hadn't invited and couldn't uninvite. Who is going to change my diapers? I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like a strange thing for a 62-year-old man to fixate on. But if you're past 60, if you've started doing the math on your own body, and you have, I know you have, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's not the dying that gets you. It's the before. It's the long middle part where you're still here, but you can't do the things you used to do. And someone has to step in. And that someone is either your family or a stranger in a facility somewhere. And you lie there in the dark calculating which one it's going to be. That thought, that specific thought, the nursing home calculation, is what sent me to the ER. My chest tightened. My left arm went funny. I was certain I was dying. They ran every test. My heart was fine. The cardiologist on call that night, a young woman named Dr. Alvarez, who looked about 19 years old, sat down next to me and said very calmly, "Your heart is okay. What's happening in your head?" I told her. I told her about the couch and the business and the divorce and the 3 in the morning math. She listened the whole way through. Then she said something I've never forgotten. The fear isn't irrational. The isolation is the problem. I didn't know what she meant then. I do now. Here's the second thing nobody warns you about. After 60, The real terror isn't becoming poor. It's becoming someone your kids dread visiting. That's it. That's the one that lives underneath everything else. You can lose money. You can rebuild. You can downsize, adjust, adapt. But somewhere in the back of your mind is this image. A body in a bed. A face that's recognizable but emptied out. A man or woman who used to be someone's parent and is now just a problem to manage. And you don't say it out loud because saying it out loud makes it more real. So you carry it in silence, and silence makes it heavier. I know a man named Gerald. He's 78 now, lives in a memory care facility outside of Sacramento. Gerald was sharp as a tack until about 73. Retired professor. Could recite Yeats from memory. His daughter Melissa told me once. We met at a caregiver support group that I went to briefly, long story. She told me that the hardest part wasn't the money, wasn't the logistics, wasn't even watching her father not recognize her anymore. The hardest part was that she'd started avoiding his calls 2 years before the diagnosis. Because every call was heavy. Every call was need. She said, I didn't stop loving him. I just started dreading him. And she couldn't forgive herself for that. Gerald, for his part, had known it was happening. He'd told his wife years before she passed that he was terrified of becoming a burden. And his wife, who was a practical woman from Minnesota, had said, Robert, don't be dramatic. Which is the wrong answer. Which is the answer that keeps the fear locked inside where it grows. The third thing nobody warned me about is this. Losing everything at 62 is different from losing everything at 32. At 32, you lose your money, you lose your confidence for a while, you rebuild. The math is on your side. You have time. At 62, you lose your money, and you lose something you didn't even know you had, which is the illusion that you'll never need anyone. That illusion is load-bearing. You don't realize how much of your identity is built on the idea that you are the one who provides, the one who doesn't ask, the one who manages. Until it's gone, and you're sitting on your brother's couch at 62 years old, realizing that for the first time in your adult life you are genuinely, completely dependent on another person's goodwill. That's a specific kind of humiliation. And I want to be careful with that word because I don't think humiliation is always bad. I think sometimes it's the thing that cracks you open enough to let something real in. But in the moment on Ray's couch, it just felt like rot. Like I was decaying in real time. I spent 14 months on that couch, 14 months. Ray never asked me to leave. His wife Margaret, who has the patience of someone who has clearly done a lot of therapy, kept feeding me and not asking too many questions. I kept rehearsing a conversation in my head, the nursing home conversation. The conversation where I figure out the logistics of my own disappearance into institutional care. I was convinced that one bad fall, one bad diagnosis, one bad piece of luck, and I was done. Not dead, just warehoused. That was the word that kept coming to me, warehoused. Here is the fourth thing. After 60, your relationship with your own body changes in a way that nobody prepares you for. You start listening to it differently. Not hypochondria exactly. It's more like you've started reading the fine print on a contract that you signed without reading. Every ache is a question mark. Every morning stiffness is a data point. You start tracking things without meaning to, cataloging. And somewhere in the tracking, you develop this running background anxiety that is just there, underneath everything, always. And it's not the pain that gets you. It's the math. If my hip is this bad at 62, where is it at 72? If I can't stand from a chair without using my arms today, what am I doing in 10 years? I met a woman at the hospital the night of the panic attack. She was in the waiting room, 67, named Patricia. there with her husband who'd come in for something with his blood pressure. We ended up talking for about an hour and a half, the way strangers do at 2 in the morning in fluorescent light when normal social rules have kind of dissolved. Patricia had been a nurse for 30 years. She knew bodies. She told me something that I turned over for months afterward. She said, "The body keeps score. But people forget that the ledger works both ways. The body also records every good thing you do for it. It's just slower to show you the receipts." I didn't start exercising until I was 64. I know. But I want to tell you that because I want you to know the receipts are real. The body does show you eventually. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. The fifth thing, and this is the one I want to dwell on, the one that actually changed the trajectory of everything, is that the conversation that saved me was the one I almost didn't have. My son Daniel came to visit me at Ray's place in the spring of 2018. He was 34, had a daughter of his own by then, lived in Denver, busy life, good life. He drove down from Denver to Tucson, 11 hours. Didn't tell me he was coming, just showed up on a Saturday morning with a bag of groceries and a look on his face that I recognized from when he was 12 and had broken a window and was trying to figure out how to tell me. We sat in Ray's backyard, which faces a wash that fills up when it rains, and it was quiet. And Daniel looked at me and said, "Dad, what's actually going on with you? Not what happened, not how are you. What's actually going on?" And I don't know why that specific phrasing got through when everything else hadn't, but I started talking. I told him about the 3 in the morning math. I told him about the nursing home calculation. I told him the thing I'd never said out loud to anyone, that I was terrified of becoming a burden to him and his sister, that I could handle losing the business and the house and the marriage, but I could not handle the idea of becoming someone they dreaded, someone they visited out of obligation, someone they talked about in worried tones in parking lots after visits. I told him all of it. My voice broke somewhere in the middle of it, which I hate, which I still hate, but it broke. Daniel didn't say anything for a while. He was looking at the wash. Then he said, "Dad, letting me help you isn't a burden. It's trust. You're not asking me to carry you. You're just finally letting me stand next to you." I have replayed that sentence 10,000 times, probably more, because here is what I know at 70 that I did not know at 62. The fear of being a burden becomes a burden. The silence around the fear, the refusing to name it, the performing of self-sufficiency, the 3 in the morning calculations done alone. That silence is the actual weight. When you finally say the fear out loud to someone who loves you, and they're still standing there, still looking at you, the fear doesn't disappear, but it becomes something you can carry together, instead of something that is crushing you alone in the dark. I moved to Denver 6 months after that conversation. Got a small apartment 2 miles from Daniel's house. Started a consulting practice. Nothing like the old business, just small work for small print shops. Enough to stay useful. I'm not wealthy. I want to be clear about that. I am not going to stand here at 70 and tell you that I rebuilt and everything is fine and here's how you can too. I'm $68,000 ahead of where I need to be for retirement, which means I'm not far enough ahead. The math is still the math. But I stopped waking up at 3 in the morning doing it alone. That's the thing. I'm not going to claim the fear is gone. The fear of the long, slow before. The fear of the body outlasting the self. Of becoming someone my family visits out of duty. That fear is still there. I think it always will be. But fear is different when it's shared. Fear that's spoken is half the size of fear that isn't. You are carrying something right now. I know you are. Something you haven't said to anyone because you don't want to be a burden, because you want to maintain the illusion that you're fine, because saying it out loud makes it real. And I am telling you, as someone who landed in an emergency room at 62 years old because I refused to say it, that the illusion is costing you more than the truth would. The nursing home is not inevitable. The becoming someone your kids dread is not inevitable. But carrying all of it alone, in silence, in the dark, that is a choice. And it's a choice you can unmake. Tell someone the fear, the actual fear, not the cleaned up version, not the practical version, the 3 a.m. version. Tell them that. If this landed somewhere real for you, if you recognize something in the 3 a.m. math, if you've been doing that calculation, I want to hear from you. Leave a comment below. Tell me what you're carrying. And if you know someone who needs to hear this today, send it to them. Because nobody's going to warn them, and someone has to.